Today is the first episode of the Freshman Talk series, and we'll be interviewing Hikmat, Mr. Hikmat. He is the co-founder of Team University, of HM Partners, and Ground Zero, a co-working space, and truly a very inspiring figure. And me, I'm Jasmine. I'm an incoming student at Wesleyan, and we hope that today's talk will be very interesting to all of you.
Thank you for inviting me. Great to see you guys.
Now, a bit of background info on Freshman Talks. It's an initiative launched by Freshman Academy and Zio Forum to facilitate conversations and gain insights from people who have studied abroad and then return to their country of origin. So that's the initiative, and this is the first episode. We're very excited to have you as our first guest.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be the first. I don't know the reason for choosing me as a first guest, but anyhow, great being with you.
Happy to hear it. So you yourself have studied in many countries abroad, right? You've studied in the US for leadership programs, in the UK, in Russia, and many other countries. So I think we're all a bit curious to find out, how has that shaped you as a person? How has that shaped how you have built Team University?
Yes, I was lucky to study in UK, and then that opened up doors to other opportunities. I think that's how it happens in life. You not necessarily understand what's going to happen to you in 10 years' time, but what you can more or less predict and influence is something that is more, short term, a year or two. And with me, it was like that. So I never would even imagine that I would go through this journey that I have now, 20 years ago, but I had some feelings and some understanding of what I want to do in coming years to go. So definitely education abroad, be it 2 weeks, be it 1 month, 6 months, or a year, definitely was the biggest factor of influence on my character, my beliefs, my principles. And I think I am lucky to have seen different continents, different places, and able to compare different cultures and understand how more or less world operates.
So would you agree that studying abroad is an experience that all youth has to experience at least once in their lifetime?
Absolutely. I think that is definitely one of the biggest investments. That's one of the biggest decisions any family makes about their kids, about, immediate relatives. I think that's the major factor that shapes any individual. So I think if you have a chance, if there are circumstances that allow you to go somewhere, even if it's not too far, for sure you need to do that.
Yes, that's a great take. And there's also a growing tendency with that for youth in Uzbekistan to really desire to study abroad, and then some of them even stay abroad afterwards. Do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think?
Yes, I think that's very important to think about your future. Not necessarily, I don't believe that everyone should come back or everyone should stay. Each time I know that it's individual decision, it's an individual choice. I prefer staying for some time, because 1 year for a person who is 20 years old, 22, very young, it's difficult to be shaped by only education itself, especially if you're going for a master's, because bachelor's is at least 3 years or 4 years, and I have seen and I know that bachelor shapes you more while you are away. But again, I think it's not enough. If you really want to become a professional, you need to try work in that ecosystem, in that culture, in that environment. And that's another merit. If you can achieve being accepted by some international company, by a foreign employer, I think that adds a big deal of value to your resume and to your experience. I have seen people who never came back and don't miss their countries. I know people who immediately came back. And I believe that, again, that's an individual decision, but if you ask me what is the best thing, I would say a good balance. I would say that better stay there for a year, 2, maybe 5 years. And interestingly, I'm observing that citizens of Uzbekistan have a tendency of feeling that they are needed back here in the home country, in the home society. That's not a must, but if there is a chance, I think there is a rational reason for coming back, because you have an advantage, you have a competitive edge, you have an advantage of coming back with some knowledge and skills, and you can achieve here something. So it's not only about patriotic feelings that you should come back. Partially it is there, but I don't think that young people should be only feel that they're obliged to come back. They should think about economic perspectives, about being able to implement whatever knowledge and experience they had somewhere there, and then being able to implement it here.
What about in Uzbekistan? How do you view the educational scene for undergraduate education specifically in Uzbekistan?
Well, since I am now immediately involved into formation of bachelor programs in Uzbekistan, I already have few years of that experience. I believe that it's a great time for us, for people who are in educational sector. It's a great time when you can shape something new. There is a good, let's say, political will to let you do something different. There was a long period of stagnation where education didn't really change. It was not agile. It didn't adjust to the global factors. So I feel with my colleagues that we are now doing something new. It's a good blend of what we have seen ourselves being educated somewhere. It's a good blend of opinions and information research we do. When we go to the conferences, we speak to other educators. And obviously, it's a lot about the local context, because you cannot just bring any new product or service and think that it's going to fly here. You need to understand the problems of this society. You need to understand the history, the prerequisites of what was the education, how people make decisions. And so it's a lot about knowing, understanding the culture of the country. And obviously, it also relates to the regulator, which is the Ministry of Education, which has some views about where this education goes, should be, and you need to take that into account. As they say, there are stakeholders in the game, and you cannot ignore what they think and how they view the changes and evolution of education. If I'm speaking too complex or too theoretical, just let me know. I'll try to simplify that.
Okay, thank you. And for Team University specifically, as you know, there are a few distinctions between when you're comparing an international education and education in Uzbekistan. How do you think Team University is different? How is Team University different from other universities in Uzbekistan in that sense?
Yeah, so going into some details of the education. For a long time, higher education in Uzbekistan was obsolete in a way that it was not connected to the practice. So I remember my conversation when I just graduated from my university back 20-something years ago. It was really unfair to hear the comment from my employer, from the immediate supervisor I had. He said, forget everything what you have been taught at the university. We will teach you what practice means. That pretty much downgrades all the achievements and aspirations and whatever you thought is important at the university. And I know that that was not just my individual conversation with employers. That was massively spread around the country, that people in the industries would think that university time is just waste of time. Yeah, you kind of learn something, but it is so different from the real life that you have to re-educate yourself after you go to the industry, to the employers. That was the biggest problem, and that was true, partially. And so our job at Team University is to interconnect whatever is happening there in the industries right now to the education. So students would not, number one, lose time. Number two, they don't get demotivated by that gap between theory and practice. And obviously, I am observing that if a student is in connection with the industries, his educational path is more productive, because he can ask questions, he or she can say, okay, that's how it's working. So that is the reason why I'm learning this. So I think what is pretty much being a golden standard in other countries, in the leading universities, is now just arriving to Uzbekistan. So Team University is a niche institution. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about entrepreneurial mindset. It's a lot about business and business studies. So what we do practically is from year one of the education, connect and build bridges for students with leading companies. And so the amount of those industrial interactions with employers increases year by year. So I think that is the biggest factor and the biggest, let's say, challenge for us to make the education relevant. And another thing about youth, and it might be my observation about the new generation. It is difficult to focus, for them, because a lot of distractors, gadgets, and everything happening in life. So it has to be a good balance of interaction. Coming here, let's say, in front of the students and speaking one way doesn't make any sense. So, for example, I teach year 3 students, and all of my education is based on the cases. So the way how education is organized is that I send them a case, a particular example of some business situation in Uzbekistan. So I only choose Uzbek cases. I teach entrepreneurial mindset, and the second subject I teach is international business strategies. So I pick foreign company that entered Uzbek market, and it faced some problems, let's say. And so the student has a reading of 2 pages. Another thing about current students, nobody likes reading. So we don't send 10 pages, 20 pages. I just send a couple of pages. But it is sufficient for them to understand a particular situation. So throughout the class itself, it's mostly about what they think about that situation and the discussion we have around different scenarios, what that company could do, or an owner of the company could do to kind of, to either minimize the risks or have a successful outcome of that problem. So it is a lot about practice. It's a lot about interaction. It's a lot about small groups, because again, having a crowd of 100 students doesn't really make any sense. I remember being in LA at the University of Southern California when I was 20 years old. And I was captivated by a huge class, students sitting, approximately 200 of them in the class, and a great professor, spreading that bright knowledge to them. I think that was more or less relevant back, it was in 2001, 24 years ago. Mm-hmm. It is rarely a case currently, because we see that, and that's what educators say, education should be organized within small classes. Because why? All those great lectures are there, available 24/7 for free. So that's not unique anymore. Number 2, you have Coursera and all those applications that provide you whatever knowledge you want to have, YouTube. So it's not about sharing the knowledge. It's about making students think and develop their critical opinions about a particular situation, and being able to speak and have your own personal opinion. I think that's another problem of our society, that we have been too patriarchal, and individual opinions didn't really matter for a long time. It was mostly about conformism. It was about, let's say, some big genius guy sitting on the top of the pyramid and giving the knowledge. That became a culture in our part of the world. So this has to change. Now it has to be less centralized. It has to be about small groups, individual opinions, and from the bottom to the top. So I think one of the big functions of any university is to really create that ability with the students, being able to share their opinion and not being afraid that it's different from others. Sorry for a long answer, but...
No, it was very insightful. Thank you. And I think that approach also has a lot of benefits to it, and fosters a lot of adaptability too, right? When you're drifting away from the old textbook-based education and you're focusing more on education that's focused on real cases. That's really nice, thank you. So Team University was founded in 2020, right?
Yep.
Now, I can imagine, I'm sure that the viewers would also agree that it must have been a very challenging process developing and building a university up.
Yeah.
Could you briefly describe the process? How was it like?
Yes. It's like, in life I have visited many places. I have been to less than 660 countries around the world. And I have been doing a lot of international business. I would take business delegations from Uzbekistan and send them to US, UK, China, and other places. And throughout those trips, very often I would be at some university. Like a place that has a huge impact and influence on the societies. It might be California, it might be Singapore, it might be London, different places. So I was always very inspired by how university, unlike in Uzbekistan, can be such a strong player in the country. Yeah. So it was during my time, university would be just a place for young generation to get a diploma and obviously get some knowledge, but it was never such a strong, big player in the society. Universities would be some places where, only students would go and professors. But when you go to, Stanfords of the world and, other big universities around the world, you can see that they attract a lot of talents, they attract a lot of attention. Politicians, billionaires, biggest CEOs and top managers, they are invited to the universities to speak. And in a lot of cases, you see that universities serve like a platform for research, development, brainstorming sessions, and choosing where the society is pretty much heading. So I was always kind of very inspired by that. So in 2017, 18, we saw big changes, in this country, relatively, comparing to what we had previously. And I remember being in Skolkovo Business School, 2018, when I read a message that the leadership of this country is looking forward to see private sector being more active with the opening universities and in generally improving higher education. So that was like an aha moment for me that, okay, that seems to be something that I want to do in future. Mm-hmm. So I have a partner with whom I was testing that idea, and he seemed to be very much inspired as well. And that was like a very important turning point where I felt that, okay, I can mobilize resources, I can attract other people, other entrepreneurs around that idea. So very alike Skolkovo project in Russia at that time, which was focused on creating a class of entrepreneurs in the country, with a country which didn't have entrepreneurs, which mostly had very industrial, oligarchical structure, I would say, or was relying on minerals rather than entrepreneurial talent. And it took us 2 years to realize what we are trying to do, to convince the regulator, convince the government to allow us to do that, to bring professors, academia on board, because we realized that we don't know what to do. We don't have particular experience of running university. We just had a dream, and we knew that we can mobilize some funds around that. So again, reversing it to the current moment, I can say that that journey from 2018 to 2020 was the most difficult, because we already have spent something like $150,000 only on research and trying to understand what we are trying to do. And we didn't have any permission from the government. So it was really stressful. Like we know what we want by 2020. We have mobilized people, partners around that idea. We are not getting the permission. So in the middle of the lockdown, 2020, 18th of April, finally we got the decree of the government on launching a team university. At that time, we only had, I think it was 4 of us or 5 of us as partners. So from 2020 to 2025, currently, if you look at our university, we have 11 founders. We have invested $7 million into that project. We already have 300 students studying at the bachelor level, and we have executive MBA successfully launched with another international partner. So, but again, what I have realized If you are running a restaurant, if you are running a trading company, within a couple of years, you already can call yourself like a mature project. But for a university which is 5 years old, we're an infant. We're not even like a toddler in that sense, because there's so many things to do for us.
So one of the things that Team University is also famous for is its diverse faculty coming from really all over the world, an international body of faculty. Was it difficult gathering all these professors and teachers? How was the process like for that?
Yeah, you know, currently, again, I mean, in this country, we have lots of challenges and problems, but the good thing about Uzbekistan's higher education and education in general, people seem to be loving our country. And if you're inviting them to Tashkent, professors are willing to come. That's an interesting news. I also know that from the school system, because my kids go to international school, and I spoke to the director of that school, and he said that the branch of Tashkent, of that chain, is one of the most in demand in terms of the teachers willing to come. So great weather, you know, fresh fruits, friendly people, affordable living, good logistical, geographical location, really makes Uzbekistan, and particularly Tashkent, these days, a good destination. Obviously, if we speak to, let's say, professors of some leading universities, top 50, top 100, probably it's going to be difficult for us to attract them, because they already have their own expectations on everything, on research, on funding, on, you know, facilities, and lots of other things. But if you are trying to bring professors from, let's say, top 1,000 universities, you will be able to do so. So we have a lot of applications from, obviously, China and India and all those countries that are not too far from us. They have a big majority, but we get a lot of applications from Europe as well, from America, from Middle East, from different places. Again, what I understood about teachers and professors is that they are willing to spend some time somewhere else, because they want to enrich their experience. So they are always happy to come for a year or two. By the way, Turkish professors. Another thing about Turkey, they have great universities. So yeah, I think that university, again, is an enterprise that should have a lot of, that should have a huge level of internationalization. That refers both to professors and students. So I think universities have always benefit from international connections. So right now we already have approximately 5 agreements on our table to build student and academic mobility. That greatly, that is thanks to Erasmus program with Europe that funds that type of mobility. We have Kazakh, Korean, French, Turkish. We have a few agreements on our table to launch that international cooperation. So answering to your question, not necessarily you can get international professors just by hiring them. Universities have a unique opportunity. They can build a scheme where they can invite a professor or send their own professor for only a semester. And that, again, creates a lot of diversity.
Thank you for sharing that. And what about with regards to the student body? What type of students does Team University look for when it's accepting applications? And if you guys have a selection process, right?
Sure.
How does that affect?
Yeah, so again, that's a question we always ask ourselves. Who is our ideal student? And so currently we have a majority of our students who are from Tashkent. The biggest second group is obviously the regional students. And the third group is international students. And we are lucky and we are happy to see more and more interest from students from neighboring countries, from the region, Central Asia. We also have students from Russia, from Belarus, from South Korea. So we have already emerging number of international students. But again, they are minority for now. But we would like to have more of them. Ideal student of Team University is someone who is definitely interested in doing some projects, who is interested in having an impact towards their society, themselves, And not necessarily as an outcome, they have to be entrepreneurs. What we say about our students and our vision is to really help them build entrepreneurial mindset. So the way how you implement that type of mindset is purely up to you. You can be a great agent of change in a corporation. You can be an agent of change in a public sector or in NGOs. But obviously, predominantly, we have lots of people who would like to do their own startups. So, and because we organize our education around incubation, around doing a project, so they even get credits for doing projects and their own business plans. And so we really love the concept of small schools and an environment where people would know their friends by names. For example, when I teach my classes, I always ask students to have a name tag because I want to talk and address them by name. And by the end of the year, more or less I can say that I know all of them by face, many of them by name, and I think that what makes a really great education in 21st century.
Yes, I would agree. And I think it's also an area that's often overlooked, that bond between students and professors.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
And also, speaking about the educational scene in Uzbekistan, how do you see it changing in the future? There's this rise in artificial intelligence, and technology is developing at really very fast rate. How do you see that impacting education?
So, interestingly, there are several big opinions about the future of higher education. Number one is that it should not be massive, something that we have discussed previously. So, although we have this target of reaching 50% of all the school graduates who need to get an access to universities, I think that's a noble cause, and that would help create a great social lift for Uzbek youth. Yeah, but at the same time, we can see that higher education in itself is not, let's say, the only goal. So a lot of people from the young generation, they want to have short-term programs as well, especially if that is related to IT sector, technological sector. We can see that big employers are not demanding higher education diploma anymore. So, and there are lots of other, let's say, education providers. They might be online, they might be hybrid, they might be educational centers that provide you with some, or colleges, or let's say some business schools that would allow you to have some immediate skill, that you want to build, let's say project management, or accounting, or let's say financial management. So I think in future we will see even more of that, when universities are not monopolies anymore, Like 50 years ago maybe, if you want to have something, if you want to have success in life, there would be no chance that you don't attend any university, So I think we would see that universities would be competing with those, let's say, new players in the market. So they have to adjust as well. It's not, again, about sharing the knowledge as such, but it's about building a great network, building a community. So as an outcome of 4-year education, university should be able to shape like-minded people. That's why, again, it's about smaller group. It's not about 5,000 people. It's about a few hundred people that you know, with whom you can collaborate, you can build projects together. Obviously, the brand of the university, its vision, mission, and values would send a strong message to the employer about what type of education and what type of people they produce. So that's why staying a very niche player is an advantage for us, because if let's say, if a business, if an organization is looking for very agile, very, let's say, out-of-the-box thinking people who will be able to team up and build some project, a lot of that is about soft skills. I think they would consider Team University graduates, because they would know what kind of philosophy we have back there, And obviously that's a lot of trust about the founders, their position in the country, because I've mentioned earlier that we have 11 founders. All of them are very active in Uzbekistan. So it's a network for students. And we have a lot of cases when students talk to us, and we do individual introductions to some of the employers. That, I think, is an example of how universities should compete in 21st century. And speaking about AI, yes, some big aspect of your question was about AI. I think I don't think that we know exactly what the future is going to be with the AI, because it's changing so quickly.
Yes.
But what we can say for sure, that we have to be able to adjust, we have to be able to change, and we need to have some set of skills that would allow us to do so. We have to be able to, again, team up with some new people. We need to be able to network, deliver our pitch, and in general, have very strong soft skills, together with hard skills as well, because I don't believe when people say, oh, hard skills don't matter, that's not true. I think academic preparedness in life is very important. That's why when we state our mission, we say that we want our graduates to be academically excellent as well, because what we see, and you guys submitting your papers to the universities, you see that your academic results really matter, yeah, for great universities, because that is an indication of you being able to sit and accomplish something, yeah. Maybe the information itself will change, but the skill you get through that educational journey will stay with you. So it's a good balance of hard skills and soft skills. And obviously, I mean, getting the information. Currently, if you ask me, how do I get information? That is a good combination of everything. That is the subscription to The Economist. That is a few podcasts that I watch. That is audiobooks I have. That is a good portion of classical books as well. And when you meet some people, new people in life, and you want to have a partnership project with them, they will still consider how educated you are. Are you an interesting individual? Is it interesting to spend time with you? So it still matters what kind of individual you are. So I don't think that AI and everything else will radically change us. It will radically change, but again, we need to be prepared through a good, let's say, volume of hard skills and soft skills we collect throughout the educational journey. I mean, sorry again for building two difficult concepts, but again, that's not an easy question.
Thank you. Yes, it's very complex and multidimensional in that sense. Yeah. And I think that's the same approach that many international universities have too.
Exactly. Yeah.
To be adaptable.
Yes.
Yes. And for Team University specifically, do you have anything planned for the future? Anything specific, exciting?
Absolutely. I mean, I just came from the meeting with the founders, and we were discussing the campus development. I think that is not an easy part of our job, but it's an exciting and challenging task. So we already have our 4,000 square meters of the building, but we also have land banks, so to say, around us. So we have a vision of growing the infrastructure of the university. And I think from now onwards, it's going to be quicker. That's one. The second thing is that we want to have a blend of executive education and bachelor's. Majority of universities in Uzbekistan either don't have an understanding how to build executive education, or they don't have skills or, let's say, a DNA to do that. When I refer to executive education, for those who might not know, I refer to short-term programs for business owners, for top managers. That is an extension to a university. And leading universities around the world, such as Harvard, Columbia, and London Business School, LSE, and many others, they are very popular for having a good balance of adults, the business people, I mean corporations, coming to the schools and universities and get, let's say, upgraded on some new trends, and they're ready to pay for that. And on the other side, it's a big cohort of obviously PhD and bachelor students. So our university, as a modern business school, also wants to have a strong executive education. We currently launched this executive MBA. It's an 18th program with a Polish partner. Our bachelor is run together with a British partner, and executive is run with a Polish partner. this is going to even more develop. We'll have even more programs for adults, for the companies, for banks and corporations. Unfortunately, for a very long time, they never would go to a university to get an education. Can you imagine? I mean, from 90s to still now, till now, if you speak to companies, how they get knowledge, they would hire an individual trainer, a consultant, who would come to the company and give them some skills and knowledge. Or the top people in the organization would do some master education, MBA somewhere in Europe, I don't know if they speak the language, or they would get this education in Russian going to Moscow. That is not the case now, because not everyone wants to go to Russia for education for obvious reasons. So we are now here offering that kind of international education for executive education students.
That's truly wonderful. I'm very excited to hear that and to see how that's going to turn out. I'm sure it was very inspiring for all of us to hear and see how the educational scene in Uzbekistan is really set to thrive.
Hopefully. We are competing in that sense with Kazakhstan, I have to say, with cities, I have to correct myself, with Almaty. Almaty is more advanced, so that shows that we don't travel too much. But if we have a chance, I think that should happen to us as soon as possible, because comparing ourselves to New York or London or Paris is really difficult, because they had hundreds of years of capitalism, market economy, and it's not always easy to relate to what we see and compare that to Uzbekistan, to Tashkent. But if you go to Tbilisi, Almaty, Bishkek, I don't know, Dushanbe, the cities around us, and it's not very expensive to travel there, you can immediately see where we have to go, how we have to develop. Because Uzbekistan, for quite a long time, was lagging behind its neighbors. So for us, we don't have to invent a bicycle, as they say. We just can go there and find a lot of inspiration, find a lot of ideas. So that's what we need to do as a city, as a country, to really catch up to our neighbors.
We've spoken a bit about the educational scene in Uzbekistan, and it was very insightful to hear. And about business, what about business? How do you see the scene of business in Uzbekistan, and how is it different now than it was in the past, in your opinion?
So, yes, I was, and I'm still very active in business. I think that's another thing that makes us different from other universities, that we never stopped doing business. I mean, the founders and many of our professors do have some other commitments, professional commitments. I was engaged into international business for 15 years probably. I had a trading business with China. I had MICE operations. It's a business tourism operations with different countries in the world. We would send business delegations to Europe, America, South Korea, and other places. So we would always be in touch with the world by hosting international companies here in Uzbekistan, organizing some events for them. Through the co-working spaces, we always had a connection to startuppers, people who are looking for new opportunities. So I started my business career professionally in 2006. And I can say that from 2006 to 2016, that is a decade of quite a difficult business environment, I have to say. If you're lucky, you could have a business, and actually a basket of businesses, because you had to diversify. So one obvious thing about the business was that your risk management had to allow you to be able to leave some business. I mean, either it can be shut down by some tax authorities, or some competitor would do some, let's say, unfair actions towards you. So you had to be aware that there are so many risks in businesses that you operate. So you need to have a basket of them, like different, as they say, eggs in different baskets. So I remember having 12 businesses from 2006 to 2016. And that was a necessity, because we had to be able to diversify our risks. And that was more or less a common thing for many entrepreneurs. Some would have 5, some would have 3, some would have 10. And from 2016 and onwards, we saw that we have to specialize, we have to focus, because competition is growing in each of our businesses. and there are no threats and risks to them immediately from tax authorities and others, because what changed with the current government is that they made entrepreneurship as a legal profession. I mean, legal in a way that it was perceived to be a prestigious, in-demand, proper job. Unlike the previous time, we had to deal with the belief in the society that we're doing something unfair, that we're doing something illegal. Many of entrepreneurs had to do business, mixed legal, illegal operations, because the system was like that. Imagine a tax regime where your tax burden would be around 60%. How can you bear a business with a 60% tax burden? It was inevitable that you had to do some, you had to be more agile, so to say. Nowadays, tax regime in the country allows you to be legal. That is very important. That is what makes it different. It is more competitive. Out of our 12 businesses, and that is partially thanks to COVID as well, we had to shut down some of them. And that was not an easy job, but that really illustrates how entrepreneurs should be ready to act. You should always be ready to shut down some businesses. You should be ready to hire people, fire people, and make some radical changes on the go. Nobody would stop the life for you. You have to be able to do that, juggle the balls while you run, pretty much. So that illustrates entrepreneurship as a mindset. I know that it's weird, and we are crazy people. Entrepreneurs are really crazy people. We're not standard people. Not everyone has to be like that, to be honest. But if you do that, if you are that type of a multitasker, you enjoy it. You think that your life is fulfilling and you are busy with lots of things. So it's a very interesting time for Uzbekistan. It's not ideal. We'll have lots of problems still. We have still involvement of the government where we don't want to see that involvement. We are still not fully market economy, but it's much better than it was 10 years ago, I have to say. So it is really interesting how we are going to, evolve and develop in the coming decade. We kept our chain of co-working spaces. We want to grow. Currently, we have 3. Now we have purchased a 4th place, and each year we want to add 1 co-working space a year in Tashkent. So we have pretty much clear plans for how we want to develop till 2030. We have our leasing operations, so we finance small and medium enterprises. We finance auto leasing, so that's what we kept. And university is now a big part of my job, our group, and we have quite, let's say, confident plans about how university becomes even stronger player in Tashkent.
Mm-hmm. With regards to that changing landscape of business, so after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the words associated and the characteristics associated with a successful entrepreneur and characteristics that drive a business forward were grit, perseverance, and strength. Mm-hmm. And intellectualism was often overlooked at those times, compared to now, where it's really changing. And now we're looking for innovation and for analytical thinking in successful entrepreneurs. Do you think the same applies to Uzbekistan?
Of course. I think in general, there is an expectation for any more or less successful person, be it an entrepreneur, a top manager, a doctor, I don't know, any field and occupation, that you are more or less decently educated. Why? Again, because of the technological changes, because of the automatization in our life. Many things human being has delegated to machines, right? We have delegated, production. We don't have to produce shoes with our hands anymore, or furniture, or construction. If you look in all the fields, automatization and that new industrial revolution, so to say, and the previous ones as well still apply. They have changed the requirements towards any professional. So now what's the job of the professional? Now the job of professional is to manage those machines, is to spend the rest of the time on something more intellectual, because you need to add value. Yeah, that's what is the basic knowledge about any business, that how are you successful in business? You are successful in business if you can add more value than your competitor. That's pretty much what makes competition, what makes you successful. So how do you add value? How do you add value in the restaurant? How do you add value in the clinic, in the medical business, in any other types of businesses? By bringing the goodwill, by bringing the additional knowledge. So that is more or less an explanation why knowledge matters. So there is a big debate still in Tashkent, in Uzbekistan, whether entrepreneur needs to read books or not. Maybe you read that in the social networks. Some entrepreneurs think, business people think that, oh, not necessary. There are podcasts, there are YouTube, there are Telegram, there are things, alternative channels to books, for example. And my argument is that, again, if I speak to someone, within 10 minutes, I can more or less say whether that person reads books or not. Because the vocabulary that person uses, the depth of the thoughts a person has, the words he or she uses, pretty much is a good indication of whether you are an educated person, properly educated or not. In 90s and 2000s, it was mostly about, as you said, grip, about things that made you a street smart person. And there were no rules, by the way. So how do you compete? If you are more resilient, if you are smarter than others, you don't have to have actually having a set of values is a burden, because they limit you in a way. But gladly, we're more or less becoming a civilized society, where, as I just gave you an example with tax system, tax regimes, now Uzbekistan is trying to be more predictable economic society or economic ecosystem. And that's the only way how you attract investments. I mean, how can you attract foreign investments if you are not predictable in terms of the climate, I mean business climate, in terms of the rules of the game, yeah? So whether you like it or not, only by building a predictable business climate, only by creating predictable rules of the game, you can prosper. Without that, you cannot become a middle-level country where we want to head. Yeah, currently, as you may know, we have approximately $3,000 a year, like a GDP. Some of you who are learning economy and business would understand that. And the task and the goal of the government is to make that 4,000 by 2030. That's pretty much how economists measure whether we are going in the right direction or not. So what I want to say is that, being at the level of 4,000 a year, you are considered to be a country with a middle income, meaning you are not poor anymore. So we want to be there by 2030. So the only way how you can build that economically prospering country is by more or less being like other countries. Yeah? Don't try to create your own bicycle. Just be a predictable business player or a player as a country. And then you will see European, American, British, Indian, Chinese investments coming to your country. So yeah, these are some of the observations I have.
Thank you. It was very insightful. And branching off of that too, as many of you know, and I'll provide additional context on this too, there's a liberal arts education and there's also professional education. A liberal arts education is one that emphasizes interdisciplinary learning and skills like critical thinking, adaptability, and really that interdisciplinary approach to learning compared to professional educations that emphasize more concrete career-based skills like marketing management. And what do you think, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have an opinion about it. So I might want to slightly maybe adjust what you said. I would introduce another, let's say, type of education. So how I understand the, let's say, liberal arts is that comparing to let's say, other universities that build, not necessarily professional, because there isn't a belief that undergraduate education in let's say, Britain or Europe, America as well, is not necessarily to choose a profession. It is about ability to think. It's about ability to, again, accomplish some projects, because as we know, at least half of the education is built around extracurricular activities, right? Mm-hmm. So you are not marked for that education. So that is about finding your passion. That is about finding people with whom you want to, I don't know, marry, become friends, or just be a like-minded person with them, yeah? So as a graduate of some university, you are considered to have some kind of set of views on the world. So, and I had gone through some online programs about universities, how to manage universities. So I have some understanding of, let's say, how particularly Brown University differentiates itself from, let's say, Yale as a university, which considers it, let's say, a liberal arts education. So again, liberal arts, to my understanding, is an education that allows you to have set of values, let's say, first of all. And you are expected to read a lot of books, not necessarily about the profession, as you said, to be very active in the society. And I think more or less the borders between liberal arts and world-class education around the world is not as clear. And interestingly, you can observe that Scottish education has 4 years of education, unlike English universities, yeah, which has only 3. Mm-hmm. So universities like St. Andrews, University of Edinburgh, Glasgow, they have been a huge inspiration for American universities. And that's a separate topic, but very interesting topic, how universities have been formed around the world. For example, in Germany, it's not coming to my mind now, but there's a university that became a prototype for research-based universities. Later, maybe I'll tell the name. So again, I think you're right in a way that you are expected to have some level of professional knowledge, but there is a master degree which you can choose in a couple of years later after the bachelor, where you pretty much make your decision on choosing a profession. So I think a good university, solid world-class university, needs to teach you to have, let's say, to be able to learn something, that skill, as you just referred to. You need to have that skill, especially British universities, as we know, they have bigger focus on academic, let's say, academic priorities, unlike Americans, which have more on leadership, on, you know, being proactive, accomplish your own projects. But overall, I don't know for sure. I mean, I didn't have an experience of working at liberal arts universities, but actually my chairman of the board at Team University, Professor Wachtel, he is a graduate of Harvard. He worked at Northwestern, Stanford, and Berkeley. So he tells me, he shares his wisdom and knowledge about that. He currently lives in Bishkek. He was the president of American University of Central Asia in Bishkek. So he tries to implement that best things, educational technologies from liberal arts, from European universities, etc. So I think world-class universities right now are learning from each other. Yeah, they learn from liberal arts, which are very boutique. Another very particular thing about liberal arts, that they create a very nice community, yeah, of people, unlike big universities where not necessarily you know people. So yeah, these are some fragments of my thoughts about things you asked.
And it's a very complicated topic.
Yeah.
And do you think the same applies to Uzbekistan? Do you think that professional skills are as valuable now?
So I think a big problem of our universities is that they are very much dominated by the government still. I mean, public universities, we cannot call them public, because when you say public, they have to be governed by the public. But these universities, state universities, are managed by the ministry, or even maybe the cabinet of ministers, which is a big problem. So one of the biggest problems of our state public universities is that they're not autonomous. That's what I have learned about universities, that they have to be autonomous. What does that mean? Autonomous means that they have to be able to make their decisions themselves. They should not go to the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Education to get a clearance on all the decisions. That's a totally big problem. That's an advantage for private universities that make decisions themselves. So it's a big challenge for state public universities. Answering to your question, that problem leads them to be not being able to adjust to the world trends because they have to go and get a permission on each big changes. So they have to be able to manage their own budgets. They have to be able to change educational system within, like in US or UK, universities are not coordinated in that way. They themselves make a decision on what kind of subjects they add, what they include, where they exclude, right? So that is very important that universities in Uzbekistan are independent, autonomous. They themselves decide which area or which direction they should head. And after they become more autonomous, they have to be able to attract talents. Unfortunately, I think our universities are not competitive, even to the neighboring countries. As a result, they are not producing competitive graduates. So, and a lot of educational, let's say, philosophy is still about sitting in the class and listen to a professor who needs to give you knowledge. How is that possible if a professor not necessarily knows what's happening around the world? So they are still not very much, they're detached from the real world. Lots of problems. At least we have solved few very important things, such as there are much less, there is less corruption at the universities. Like 10 years ago, if you would go to any public universities in Uzbekistan, getting to those universities would cost you some cash, let's say. That is not the case. That is a huge achievement of Uzbek universities, that they became more transparent. They are not corrupt like they were, but there are still many things to do.
That's it for the section on business and education. I'm sure it was very insightful for our audience. It was honestly very insightful and inspiring for me too. But out of curiosity, I think we're all curious to know, you're a very busy person and you probably have a very hectic lifestyle with all these businesses you're running. Do you have anything that you do and like pursuing outside of work? Any hobbies, sports, maybe?
Absolutely. I think I know people who don't have anything else besides work, and these are unhappy people, I have to say. They look unhappy. It's in many circumstances really boring to talk to them because they're just limited to their job, their profession. They're pretty much victims and hostages of their situation. So I think the biggest joy, to me, what lives give me is definitely sports. I try to stick to 10,000 steps a day. I have my morning and evening sport routine, and I have my phone with my audiobooks, with my amplifier or headphones, that allows me to really really get detached from the work, and I enjoy getting new information. Another thing, some of you might know that I also run podcasts like you are doing now.
Oh.
Have you seen it? No?
Yes, I've seen a few podcasts of yours.
It's in Uzbek language. Yes. So I have been doing podcasts and interviews for a long time, since 2016. But that was in Russian language first. It used to be called Business Lab, Laboratoria Бизнеса. But then there was something that I lost, let's say, energy to continue doing that. I think partially because I was very busy at my work. So for the last year and a half, we are doing great in terms of that podcast. I enjoy listening to interesting people from different fields, politicians, business people, philosophers, historians, and many others. So I enjoy having podcasts. So we have 50,000 subscribers. Our podcasts are seen by hundreds of thousands of people, many of them. So I enjoy doing that, let's say, impact towards society, I hope towards youth. So that gives me a lot of, satisfaction in life. Another big thing is journeys. I like traveling. So every month I have some business or individual travels. I am also a member of different societies and communities and clubs around the world and in Uzbekistan. That is another thing that I enjoy, is really meeting interesting people. Not necessarily from business, many of them from other spheres. I think life is given once to us, and we have to make maximum out of that.
Right.
So I like traveling, I enjoy meeting interesting people. And interestingly, that also influences my work positively. So in life, I think everything is very much interconnected. Time I spend with my family, my health and sports, international travels, my interests such as the podcasts, and university as a separate project, other businesses I have. So I think I can say I'm a happy person having a good balance of everything.
Yes, it sounds very multidimensional, the way you live life. It's very nice and very inspiring, honestly, to hear.
I think there's a portion of people on Earth who are crazy like myself, who cannot concentrate on one thing.
Yes.
And we have to compensate that by, having different things in our life.
Yes, a lot of things that you're juggling.
Yeah.
Now, and as you mentioned, you have a daughter studying in the UK, right?
Yeah.
In what university? University of Edinburgh.
Yes.
Right? Nice. So maybe you're aware, but many parents in Uzbekistan, they express worry often about sending their kids to universities abroad. They see it as a scary choice for many factors. But what were the driving factors that led you to send your daughter to university?
That's a good question. I think partially because, again, whether you know that, observe that or not, that we repeat the deeds and actions of our parents in many circumstances. Whether we admit that or not, we look up to our parents, and these are our role models. So my father used to study abroad at that time, as he used to joke, saying that we didn't have Harvards and and Stanfords. We could only go to Moscow. So he used to study in Moscow for 6 years. So he was away from the family for a long time, and that has influenced our family a lot. He had friends from different places, from Moscow, from Central Asian cities with whom they studied. So it was not global, but very regionally diverse at that time, yeah? So that was always great to see, that my father had a friend somewhere else. He could, pick up the phone, call, go somewhere, or host a friend from a different culture. So I always was, I was admiring that he could do that. And I think it was his contribution that he helped me to get to university I studied, through his mentorship, through his advices, etc. I think still in our society, parents have a big influence on our kids, yeah? By either supporting their education or being more conservative, but still they influence. So in that regard, my father not only himself gave me a good example, but he also pushed me and nudged me to get some interesting education. At that time, I remind you that I studied at definitely the best university in the country, which was very global in the way how it was positioned and the thoughts, and it was very liberal, again, unlike many other universities in the country. So that triggered my interest towards world economy, towards diplomacy, towards international life. And I have visited several countries while I was a student, year 1, year 2, year 3, UK, Germany, and many other places. So that really set initial standard for myself, that I want to be exposed to the world. So yeah, that's something that myself and my wife had, because we studied at the same university. She was also very active. And we agreed that we would be actually taking that achievement to the next level. We were not able to study abroad on our bachelor level. We thought, okay, our kids will have that chance. Because we saw that, by the way, interestingly, when we were studying with her, with Aziza in St. Andrews in UK, we barely could communicate. That was really tough, I have to say. I was 24, 25. She's a year younger than myself. We struggled understanding people, not because of the Scottish accent only. we would struggle because it was not easy for us. I mean, we were not exposed to all the technologies you have now. And although we had good level of IELTS, TOEFL, we would have TOEFL, but it would not mean that we can communicate. And that was a trigger for us saying that no, our kids need to have that opportunity even earlier. So they went to international school. And for them, language and culture was already international from the beginning. So it is difficult to imagine kids who go to international school going to some Uzbek, even international Uzbek university, because you already, as if you are a fish that once have been out of the aquarium and you were out of the lake, you even were somewhere in a big, ocean. And how can you go back in that sense? So, for her, it was not easy to adjust, although she was in an international environment. We remember that she struggled initially, building bonds and being active, like first year. But we saw that it is a much easier path for her rather than for us. Now she's completing year 3, and she is very comfortable in the way how she already works for the university for a second year. She's the head of the Central Asian Society, which she founded in Edinburgh. She has lots of other activities, so she's fully a student. I think that is very important that you guys who go to study somewhere else, not just go there for academic results, We discussed this earlier. You have to be able to feel yourself equal to others and being able to launch some clubs, being very active there. Not like us, because I have to say it was a big struggle, inner struggle for us to go to some club and be active there, because really culturally it was a shock. I mean, how to behave, what to say. I hardly could say an anecdote in English when I was 25. Even now it might be, not an easy thing for me. I mean, so what I'm saying is that in our family, we agreed that we would give a chance to them to see the world through education. And you are right that for girls, it's a cultural stereotype, it's a cultural prejudice that parents are afraid sending their girls and even boys to somewhere. But I think what is important is that if the family had established values in the family, if they have a trust and bond and they are honest to each other, it is not the distance, geographical distance, that would keep them from doing something. It has to be the moral, the intellectual principles, and everything that and a strong connection to their parents. Like our daughter, Donna, she's very connected to us. We chat and talk to her almost every day. And with these technologies, it doesn't matter if she's in a neighboring district or she's 5,000 kilometers from here. And we see each other like once in a month or once in 2 months anyway. So I think for parents, it is very important to realize, I don't know whether parents would watch this podcast, is to realize that in 21st century, it is about global competitiveness of the kids. If previously we would compete with, again, within some small environment, now we are competing with the whole world. I mean, through internet, through all those technologies, regardless of where you are. You compete with some Chinese guy sitting in Beijing, you compete with some guy sitting in London or in LA, girl in London. So it is really a global competition, and the whole world is exposed to you if you are connected and you see that as your own home, let's say.
So I'm sure that was a very interesting message to the parents too. I'm sure we have a lot of parents watching.
You probably would need to translate that to them.
And my parents are watching for sure. I can attest to that. And so you would agree, I guess, the consensus that we can come to, that an education abroad, as scary as it may sound to the growing generation, sending your children abroad, that eventually it comes with many, many benefits that outweigh any concerns that you may have.
Absolutely. I remember when I was probably 6, 7 years old, there was a guy, my neighbor, who recently came back from India. I mean, he was originally from Tashkent. And he could speak English like freely. And he was very confident. And I think that confidence came from him living somewhere else, that he had a feeling that he has something that other boys and girls didn't have. And I was so inspired by that. And I thought, wow, I would like to speak English. I would like to also see the world. So I saw that the confidence in a person comes from seeing the world, being able to interact with different cultures, and educatedness again. I mean, whatever it might mean in terms of not just academic, but also understanding, having the wisdom of how world operates. I think it is very crucial that any person travels, and you see, interestingly, we cannot say that we know how the world operates only by going to Antalya, or to Dubai, or to, I don't know, Istanbul, Maldives. It has to be really living there. It has to be, and what is the best option to live somewhere? Through education. I think this is the best legal excuse you can have to leave your parents for a year or two, be sponsored by some university grant program scheme, yeah? So education, be it on bachelor level or master, is the best opportunity. Another thing that I was thinking about is that throughout the university years, we are formed as individuals. I remember that between 16 to 25, that window pretty much shaped who I am now, like 80–90%. The rest is just small minor adjustments to whatever I believe in, yeah? So I think education, the bachelor level, the community of people you have, your interests, your future plans are shaped in that window. And if you choose the best, and I believe that freshmen, what you do is you really target the best education in the world. I think that is really great and noble. By the way, just a couple of days ago, I saw that even there is a president decree on sponsoring Uzbek citizens to get into Ivy Leagues. I think these are great, ambitious programs that Uzbekistan needs. Not just because Ivy League gives some very unique education. I'm sure that even going to top 50, top 100, you can have the same, maybe sometimes even better education, but that is an ambitious program. That is really a great, just, kind of a tag or a great motto. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be there. I think it has to be top 100 is a great, anyhow, if you get into University of Toronto, if you get to National University of Singapore, LSE, Manchester, Columbia, NYU, Duke, I don't know, all those top 100, I'm sure you know all those names. They are equally great. So you shouldn't be, kind of unhappy if you didn't get into top 10, because that is very subjective, I have to say, the rankings and everything. It's about being in that cohort of world-class universities. And trust me, all of those top 100, they're all world-class.
Thank you. And I think we can also conclude on that very inspiring note that in your formative years, you really have to be that sponge, soaking in every resource you have and trying to grow as much as you can, like Mr. Hikmat mentioned. It was very nice hearing your thoughts on many of these topics on education and business. It was very insightful, I think, for both the viewers and for me too, for sure. So thank you.